One of the most common questions I get asked on the ratings I publish each week goes along the lines of, how did this race rate at that level, or how is it higher or lower than that race when there's such a gap between them on overall times? So I thought I'd do a short video to explain why there are often differences between what the overall times say and what the weight for age performance ratings say, and provide some examples within the top rate platform from last Saturday's races. So let's get into it. Sometimes we can make a simple observation that on overall times, one race on a given day was much faster or slower than another race over the same distance. That's where those questions typically come from. A level of sophistication above that is time ratings, which can be done in numerous ways, but typically involve rating the overall time of a race and nothing else against some type of standard or par time, including an adjustment at some stage of the process for conditions on the day that may have produced faster or slower times than typical, for example, when the track's wet. The key principle is that the faster the overall time, the better the race rating. A fast time equals a high rating race, and a slow time equals a low rating race. Weight for age performance ratings take a broader view of the speed measures out of a race. While it's true that on average better horses run faster overall times than lesser horses, there are thousands of races a year where that doesn't apply. Conceptually, it's important to recognise that very few races are run in the best possible time that the horses competing are capable of. And as part of the weight for age performance rating process, I'm aiming to measure what I call the true speed merit of the race. That involves different algorithms from evidence I've gathered from studies that show it's not only overall time that matters to understand the strength of a race, but also early speed and sectional times. The key principle in my case is that a fast time isn't always a strong race and a slow time isn't always a weak race. A perfect example of that is there were numerous times in Winx's career where she ran slower time ratings than one or more other races at the meeting. But on true speed merit measures, taking into account those other factors, the quality of her race above the others at the meeting was clear. So it's the consideration of those other speed factors that explains why the weight for age performance ratings won't always line up with observations about overall times on the day. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples from last Saturday's racing where weight for age performance ratings differed to what the overall times had to say. Here is the top rate summary page of winners from Caulfield last Saturday. I want to draw your attention to races 2 and 3, both run over 2,000 metres. On times, the benchmark 70 won by Emphasize was much faster, 3.7 lengths faster than par, and it was in fact the second fastest time rating race of the meeting, only bettered by the Group 1 CF4 won by Another Will. It was 4.5 lengths faster than the next 2,000 metre race won by Garachico, which was only the 7th best of the 10 races at the meeting. Now, experience and instincts tell us there's no way that benchmark 70 race, with 3 horses split by half a length at the finish, was the second best race on the day, at a meeting that contained a stack of other group races, only to be bettered by a Group 1. It's a great example of where weight for age performance ratings differ significantly to what the times say because of the concept of true speed merit. Between the 2 races over 2,000 metres, the broader speed measures show that Garachico's race was much stronger, largely due to the differences in early speed, and that Emphasize's race finished many lengths slower, which you can see here in the race shape figures. That's important in terms of assessing race quality. You can see here that Garachico ends up with clearly a higher weight for age performance rating, and that's after Emphasize gets more credit because he carried more weight relative to weight for age. If I focus only on the at the weights figures in this column without allowing for any weight, you can see Garachico is much, much higher. At 88.2, Emphasize actually had the lowest performance rating of all winners at the meeting. That's not a knock, as he's a lightly raced horse that's still coming through the grades. It's a benchmark 70 race that he won. While the ratings process ignores that class label and focuses on the speed merit and those other factors, the result here is more consistent with what makes sense and what will be reliable going forward, as opposed to just looking at what the overall times say, which in isolation says the race was better than a whole heap of other group races, and that makes no sense. Finally, a quick look at an example from Randwick last Saturday. Races 1 and 4 were both run over 1600 metres. O'Diamond Lil ran 0.4 lengths faster overall time than Point and Shoot, and they both carried almost identical weight versus weight for age. But Point and Shoot rates much higher due to superior speed merit, especially his finishing speed, which you can see reflected here in the race shape. If these two horses were to meet in a race, the betting wouldn't even be close. Despite a slower race time at his last start, the betting would be heavily favoured towards Point and Shoot, which is reflected by their respective ratings. Of course, there are many more things that go into a race outcome than a last start rating or even ratings in general. They're just one tool to help understand the merit in performance and to line horses up for future races. The key point I want to make is that they're often different to what the overall times might say on a day because they take a broader view of the speed measures within a race. Hopefully that helps to answer any questions around future meeting ratings and provides a better insight into the weight for age performance ratings themselves.